ba ba ba.
Ba 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 yeah. You guys,
We did it.
we're back.
It's crazy.
It's been
a while.
It's been weeks, dude.
I haven't seen you in a minute.
Like in a long time. And you know, we've just been busy. We're busy boys right now.
I missed you.
Oh, man, I miss you all the time. I miss you when I'm with you. That's how much I miss you.
Give it up for friendship.
Guys, friendship all day.
love that.
We love it.
We have a very good episode of On the Record, presented by...
The record. Presented by...
On the Record.
On the record.
Presented by...
Storm Chasers Limited.
Thank you. That was good. That was good.
That was a good one.
Oh my
Friendship.
God, they love
Friendship, we're
friendship.
Love it.
It's like our minds are
Yeah.
glued together.
Okay, so this week represents a step into adulthood for Storm Chasers. This was the very first moment, Storm Chasers 004, when there began to be a little bit of credibility surrounding the label. We had done a couple releases and they were doing pretty good. And you know, and I have to apologize for an earlier mistake from a previous episode.
Oh no!
When we had done episode 1, when we were talking about the Kitty Hawk EP, I had mentioned that Intersections was already finished.
Oh,
And that was not true.
No.
That was totally a fabrication and a just my timeline getting so befuddled with what's going on. And I actually think that the reason why was because when we made this, when we were in the process of making this record, which is Intersections, the Into It Over record, and that is Storm004. Although we weren't the sole people that put this record out, we were part of how this record came to be. And when we were working on this, I think the record was being either recorded or was finished being recorded when we aligned Kitty Hawk.
When we got
So this was,
I think the Kitty Hawk stuff came. It was like it took a little bit. It took a little bit. Like it came out in the end of 2012, but it came out on record I think later.
Yeah.
Like, you know, that year. So yeah.
and so this kind of like, you know, was not very far behind. Like I think we had already been working on it, but that was why my timelines were befuddled.
Well, let's take a step back from the timeline. All right, so we're talking 2013.
It's 2012.
2012.
We're writing the recording record.
Did you write it in Chicago?
We wrote it in Chicago. So me and the drummer on this record, Nick Joaquin, we had a practice space. It was at a building called Right on Carroll, which is here in Chicago, which we don't have that space anymore.
But
we're across the hall. But so we were in a practice space at that time called Right on number. I'm all jumbled up. It was room 303.
Okay, got it.
In Right on Carroll. Now I am in room 314B. But then we were in room 303. And 303 is where we wrote Pet Sounds. It's where we wrote Proper. It's where we wrote Koji Split. It's where we wrote this record. It's where all their stuff was written. It was a very formidable space. It was us. Numenon was in that room. Cut Teeth was in that room. Mountains for Clouds was in that room.
And we still have homies. We still have homies in that room.
There's still homies in that room now.
Yeah.
What Gives is in that room. Parties. Pool Kids also rehearse in that room.
Yep.
So 303 is somewhat remained in the family. There was a period shortly after this record was made where I moved across the hall because there was just so many people who had been involved in the room at that point that it was actually tough to schedule rehearsals. And Into It Over at that time was playing probably...
You needed it.
We were playing like 5 to 6 days a week.
Yeah.
So we were only doing that band. Like we weren't working jobs. We were just doing Into It Over it. And so we were in there a lot.
It's kind of like Fugazi.
Is that true?
They would practice every day. That's why Fugazi is incredible.
Yeah.
And that's why
same
you're
with Black
incredible.
Flag. You know, but that's all we had to do was be in a band. So we took it really, really seriously.
You're incredible.
So the reason that this came to be, the reason Storm Chasers was part of this at all was because, Into It Over had been signed to Triple Crown at that time. And Fred Feldman, who is was the owner and operator of Triple Crown. He no longer operates Triple Crown anymore. But at the time, he was very considerate of the fact that Into It Over It should be building a brand beyond what the band was.
Cool.
And really championed and endorsed that we include Storm Chasers in everything that we're doing as like part of the part of the plan. The reason that Standards didn't have Storm Chasers as part of it was because at that point I'd already thought I was winding the label down. Like I already thought it was over. And so it wasn't included on that one, even though I probably should have. But he gave me the permission to include the label logo and give it a catalog number and work together on like exclusive vinyl for the band and for the label. And it was really, really special. So
kind of see it.
It's hard. Yeah, so it's hard. We can get to that.
We'll get to the art, but you can see them.
So it was a co-release between myself, Triple Crown, and Big Scary Monsters in the UK. And this is the Big Scary Monsters variant. I brought it because it had all the labels on it. And for those of y'all who don't know, Big Scary Monsters operates out of Essex in the United Kingdom. And
wow,
they've done a lot of emo releases. They do a lot of licensing of American bands over in the UK. They've also turned a lot of UK bands onto American audiences because there's just such a good cross-pollination of relationships.
So this is like kind of like the first big partnership that we've done. And we've done a few after this.
This was, but this was the first one. And this was kind of like us legitimizing Storm Chasers for the very first time. It's no longer us making DIY, paper CDs and putting hand assembling records anymore. It's like, oh, we're actually like putting this on a thing that
you can find a lot more people in the record store.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And that was the whole point. It was like, how can we kind of take the label to the next level at that time? Sorry,
cool.
I got milli hairs are just floating around.
It's just what's in the air. I have to clean this basement.
It's okay. I want to be reminded of her at all times.
It's like a soft little kiss,
Millie,
in the air. But it's interesting. So you're talking about writing it, back in 2012, 2013. But then it's like, what Proper came out, 2011.
Mm-hmm.
So you've already gotten Proper out. You did your first full length, and you're doing the cycle. You come to intersections, and you change. You change what's going on.
So this, right, okay.
Yeah.
So this is a good segue into when we were talking about the formation of Pet Symmetry. I felt, for better or worse, coming off of Proper, that it was a really good time to establish specifically what I wanted Into It Over to be.
Mm-hmm.
I think after doing 52 weeks and after doing 12 towns and after doing Proper and all these these splits and different releases, there wasn't really, and I mean, the curse is that it's still the case, but it's really hard to pigeonhole what Into It Over is. It's been very, very difficult for folks to figure out what kind of band we are and where we fall in the spectrum of what indie rock and emo is. And I think that is exciting for me to be able to constantly make records that are challenging for people and a little different, and that every record is kind of its own experience. But I think fans of music like to rely on predictability and be able to say definitively what a band is. And so that's been exciting for me as a songwriter, but it's, I think, challenging for people who are fans of the band.
And I think this was a sonic shift. It was, definitely a big, bold move. Let's call it a bold move, because I think, you had this, what you'll call it, a pop punk.
Yeah, it was like Proper, Proper always, to me, Proper and the Koji split to me always felt like the finishing of the like putting a period on
Proto.
on the style of music that like kind of was from the Progress up until what Into It Over was at that time. Like that style of kind of upbeat, emo-y kind of stuff. I feel like I'd done everything that I could with that sound at that time.
I get that. Yeah.
And it was time for me to explore what else I could be really interested in terms of playing guitar.
Weiss has to offer, and it shows.
So, I one of the big things when we started writing was I didn't want to use a pick anymore. I was getting really into fingerpicking with all the fingerpicking the guitar. I was getting really interested in new tunings and new styles of guitar playing. And
what's your favorite?
My favorite tuning?
Yeah.
I would say that my favorite tuning is open C sharp.
I thought you were going to say tuna fish.
Oh, I like tuna fish too.
Can I get a fish?
Anyway.
Yeah. Got it.
But yeah, so like I have all these songs and these riffs and ideas, and all of them are very centered around the same style because that's what I was excited about at the time. Right. And I'd be presenting these to Nick, and it was a very different thing. And I think Nick and I were really excited about pushing ourselves as players, but also doing something different, writing the different record and seeing where we could take this project in a new direction. At the same time, There and Pet Sematary were a band.
It's true.
And so the itch that I would have had about playing upbeat, rock, fast stuff or technical stuff was being scratched by playing in those two bands. So Into It Over It was able to take a very specific path from Intersections on.
No, and that makes a lot of sense. You can compartmentalize. Caramel apple pies. So you can caramel apple pies, right? and you can have your like more pop leaning with Pet Sim. You can have your more
like tech shreddy thing with There.
Yep.
And because those were the three elements that kind of made Into It Over before that. There was like the fast songs, there was the techie songs, and then there was the introspective, like kind of dark, moodier songs. And when Pet Sim and There started and scratched the two sides that scratched those two elements, I was able to fully dive into the introspective, moody side of Into It Over It, or like where I saw Into It Over It going specifically.
And those songs are beautiful. I think, I was graced with the opportunity to go on. So it's been 10 years, and there was the 10-year tour, and I was able to witness the songs live, right?
Yeah.
For a few nights, and it was awesome just to see you all crush those songs and remember why it was my favorite Into It Over It record. Standards is my favorite.
Standards
has my favorite songs.
Got it.
It might not be the best Into It Over It record, but it has the best songs.
And that's kind of the thing that I also really appreciate about Into It Over fans is that everyone has their own favorite record, and it's kind of, I think, where those records meet people at certain points in their life. Like, I think people who have grown with the band have also sonically grown with where the project has gone. And while I do think there is nostalgia for a lot of the older stuff, I think like it was always for me just a pure representation of where I've been at in my life, and I think if your life is moving at a similar trajectory as somebody going through their 20s and then going through their 30s and, and so on, it's meant to meet people where they are. It's very present. It's very in the moment. It's very reflective of what it's like to be at those certain times. As we continue to roll out records, I think they're now meeting people where I'm at, and just in the nature of what it is. And that to me is my most confessional project. It's the most honest project. It's the most representative of who I am as a person.
Could you give me what song you would like us to play right now that you think represents the album the best?
My God, a song from Intersections that I think encapsulates the whole album the best is probably the first song. It's New North Side Air. All and right. I think that was kind of right in the middle of the writing session too. Obviously we didn't record or sequence these songs in the order of where they were written, but New North Side Air was kind of right in the meat of where we were writing the album. And and I think to me that it covers all the bases of like the sonic sounds that you're going to find. Like the album definitely evolves, but if you had to play one track to kind of get the vibe, that would definitely be the tune.
Super producer Sam, let's play New North Side Air. back. What a beautiful song.
So that song's about
what a way to open a record.
That song's about moving from the apartment in which Proper was written and moving into the new apartment where I was living when Intersections was written. All of these photographs.
Yeah, let's talk about the art. Let's get this.
So Ryan Russell is a outrageously good photographer. At the time, he was based in Birmingham, Alabama. Now he's based in Bellingham, Washington.
Oh, he's in Bellingham.
He's out by Seattle. But Ryan had shot all of the photos for Proper, which all of the artwork from the Proper photo shoot were from my apartment at that time. Like those were just images from my apartment that I was living in. Most of the images were from my bedroom. So like that was literally the room I was sleeping in. And
what's the sessions he would do?
Nervous Energies.
Yeah, and he would do, and like, so he did the Pet Sim Nervous Energies in the bathroom. He did lots of one with you probably too, right?
Yeah, we did. There was an Into It Over one. There was a There one. Nervous Energies kind of became there. Before Nervous Energies, there was something called Pink Couch.
Right.
Which our friend Dave did. And, but Nervous Energies kind of took over where Pink Couch left off. It was a really good way for bands to kind of get cool, vibey, like stripped down live performances of their songs. And so when we were planning the artwork for Intersections, I was given a lot of leeway from Triple Crown to be able to do something cool with the art. And I've done 3 records on Triple Crown. Every single one, they've given me absolute carte blanche to do like super cool art stuff. And if you have this record, or if you have Standards, or if you have Figure, all 3 of those records have just outrageously beautiful layouts, and they were really cool about letting us kind of run with it and do whatever we want.
You definitely pushed them to their limits.
Yeah. So with this layout, I had this idea, Ryan's photos, and I mean, this whole layout is just different photos that he took of different places and locations all around the city that had significant meaning to me and to Nick. And we can go through them one at a time if you would like. The idea that I had for Ryan's photography, which is I wanted it to be fully displayed. I didn't want there to be anything obstructing his photography because his photography is awesome. And so I had the idea to do spot varnish for every piece of text on the record. There's not a single printed piece, like a single printed letter anywhere on this entire layout.
I didn't realize that was the reason, but that's a great reason. Yeah.
So when you look at it and you're not, you're just looking at it, it just looks like Ryan's photo. Right. There's nothing obstructing it. But if you tilt it at a certain angle, I don't know if you'll be able to see it here on the vlog.
It might be hard.
But if you tilt it at a certain angle, you can see the text and read the text, and all of the lyrics and recording information are all printed across these photos. So this photo, which is this is me crossing the street at Damon and Division. This here was Soma Studios. This is where we made Intersections. And now it's a furniture store called Velvet Goldmine. So right over here is the Rainbow. If you've ever heard Mike and Celis sing about the Rainbow, that's the Rainbow. And this whole space was the recording studio that was owned by the Sea and Cake and Tortoise. So this is where we made the album. It was where all the Sea and Cake records were made. There was a couple Yellow Tango records made there. There was a lot of great stuff made at Soma throughout the years, but it was engineered and mixed by Brian Deck, who had done records for Modest Mouse. He had done records for Iron and Wine, like he did Our Endless Numbered Days. At some point during the recording of this session, Brian had offered me the ability to buy the guitar, the acoustic guitar from Our Endless Numbered Days. And it was actually like at a very fair price. And
that's awesome.
I didn't buy it. I really, really regret it. I never bought it. But yeah, so here you'd walk in. This was like the kitchen and the front lounge area. And then back here was where the actual studio was. If I flip back this way,
you go for it.
This is the last page is the daytime image of the cover. Here is the corner of, this is Lake Street, which is also the cover of the album. And this is where Kate and I eventually moved. This was in Logan Square. This was the apartment, like the corner in which I had my apartment up until a couple years ago. This was like Parsons hadn't even opened yet. This was like here on the corner. This photo was shot before it was open. If we keep going back, these pages are thicker than I remember. This is a really well done record.
Time, patience, money. They could do a lot of nice things.
This was the corner, the toy store in which my ex had worked at prior to this album being made, which was a significant corner. There's a couple songs.
Is that the old Logan Arcade?
No, this is Delilah's, and that's Road to Fuji.
Oh, Road to Fuji. Okay.
So this is like Division and fucking Clybourne, maybe. Okay. And then here was downtown, just a specific area for a great intersection of the city. This was the Blue Line station at Logan, which is the train that I would take almost every day. Is the one right by where we lived. This was the Logan Monument, which is also a big thing in Logan Square. That's where Shaking the Leaves was. This was an intersection of the Belmont Bridge, which no longer exists. If you try to find it, it's gone. And at the time, I used to go to a bar right over here.
Oh, that
Underbar.
Yeah, Underbar, dude.
So Underbar was the 4 a.m. bar that we would go to after my job at that time. So I would go to Underbar a lot around this era. I also had an apartment right over here, kind of on this side of the street that I lived at right before I lived in my Humboldt apartment.
And Narnia was over here too.
Yeah, so that was a significant intersection.
Oh, that's
fun.
Then
if we go a little deeper, this was the Skylark, which was a bar that I was a very big fan of in that era. On this side, this was the hospital where Nick was working at the time of us making this record. Nick was he's a doctor now. He's an emergency room doctor now. But this is where he was doing his RN, which is why we chose that. This is the Roby House. This was the intersection of the Roby.
Yes.
It's the Frank Lloyd Wright House. That's in Hyde Park. This was the Clipper, which was the bar where my old apartment was next to. Many formative nights about the Clipper. If you're familiar with the song Frames That Used to Greet Me from Proper, the bar referenced in that song is the California Clipper.
Oh, yeah. Wow.
And then here was my first apartment in Chicago. Eventually, there was a record store called Logan Hardware that was on the first floor. But I used to live above it over here. And then this is right on Carroll, where the record was made.
What rich history.
And then, this image of Lake Street, which
I love it.
Was shot an evening after a rehearsal one night. And it's such a vibey street with those like iridescent yellow lights. So you've gotten the whole spiel on what these photos are, why we chose them. The overlay die cut that's in the front is actually the overhead shot of Logan Square. So this is like down here was my new apartment. Up here was like my first apartment, and this is Milwaukee Avenue. It just like cranks through.
Did you have, so question for you about that for the map. Who cut that? Who drew that? Because, I used to make maps. Did you get that just from Google? Someone just drew on it? Okay,
so my friend Marky Laddish did the layout, and Marky sang in a band called the Felix Culpa. Marky was a super old friend. The Progress, my first band, and the Felix Culpa used to tour together when we were in our late teens. And Marky had done a lot of art for me throughout the years, but I had this idea, and I felt like he'd be the right person for the job.
I mean, it's a beautiful record, and I remember when you did it, we were all like, "They let you do that?"
Yeah, that's how I felt. And like,
hearing how you're talking about it too, like, embossing and doing like things so you can see the art and make it the focal point.
Yeah,
and making that part of the art is so cool.
Well, dude, that's how all my favorite records are that way.
Yeah.
It's an immersive experience to me, especially if you're buying vinyl. Like you can't have a passive listening experience when you're playing a record, because at some point you have to flip it. At some point you have to be present enough to go and like turn the record over. And so those are usually moments listening to a vinyl record where you are able to like sit and really digest the full creative scope of the record. And I've always been, my favorite band is Pearl Jam. That's what talk about a band that has always done cool graphic design and artwork for their albums. They really take the vinyl medium seriously, and that was always a thing that I wanted to do.
And they're thinking about their fans.
Totally.
Which is what we do with our Patreon. We want to just
I love the parlay right there. That's such a good way to pivot into it.
It's so true, though. We can only do this because of you. And, if you're watching this after, our subs have seen this, like, that's awesome. We love that you're watching this, but we're just happy that we can do fun things like this. We can make crazy records with amazing art because, you all are supporting us. So if you like what you see, like and subscribe. You can see more down there.
Absolutely.
And let's What's another song from Intersections that you really like?
My favorite is Obsessive Compulsive Distraction, which is such a unique song because it requires a very specific capo. It's like totally harebrained shit, the way that we wrote that song.
I'm so glad you brought this up.
And it's absolutely one of my favorites. I think that's like still an Into It Over song I would write today.
Okay, so I want you to know something. Before we play the song, I had to find the lyric. So when like halfway through the song, it's like, I repeat while details leave me. That part, sorry, I didn't warm up. So that part, I don't know why, but I was in the kitchen today, and this has never happened to me. I started thinking of Bare Naked Ladies, 1 week. And for some reason,
but not
that part, not that part. You know, the chickadee China, the Chinese chicken part?
Yeah.
And like, I was like, so it's like, I repeat. I was like, chickadee China, the Chinese chicken. And now we're going to play you the song.
And you'll never get it out of your head.
You're never going to unhear it. So let's hear.
Oh, Obsessive Compulsive Distraction. What we also call OCD as the Into It Over song from this record.
All right, we'll be right back.
So,
and we're back. Did you hear it? Because I can't unhear it.
Here's a tip for bands out there who want to get banging layouts done for their band. Fully form your idea. and bring it to the label when it's done. Don't tell them what they're getting, and don't wait for them to tell you what to do. Fully conceptualize your idea and design it, and then deliver it. And if the execution is correct, the label will have to do it. They'll be like, well, this is just too awesome. We cannot do it.
You got to go for it. If they say no, then you can edit. Don't edit. Yeah.
Ask for forgiveness. Yes. Don't ask for permission. Agreed. Every banging layout I've ever been able to do has been by just fully forming it and being like, well, here's the whole thing. And the presentation, if it's well executed and thoughtful, 9 out of 10, I think the label working on your album will back it up.
Listen, we talked about this in the first episode. There's examples of it behind us besides this beautiful record. I shouldn't make artwork, I should say. But guess what? People let me get away with it, so you can too.
So when we recorded this record, yes. it was recorded in 2 giant sessions. Brian, who was working on this, was also concurrently working on a Modest Mouse record at the same time. And
Is it the ship one?
It's the one that's like the overhead view of the city.
Oh, never mind. Yep. Yeah, that one came out. Yeah.
Which
I don't know the name.
I mean, that's a whole other
super producer.
That's
Sam
for a whole different podcast.
Super producer Sam loves Modest Mouse, and she'll put the image up.
Yeah. So anyway, we do 3 weeks, and we track all the basic stuff. Like we got all the guitars done, drums done, bass done, most of the overdubs. And then we had a month off before being able to get back together and have another like 2 or 3 weeks to finish it. And that was really challenging to have just all of this extended time in the middle to not button it up, but also very helpful because it gave us perspective and context. Like we were able to listen to it a lot.
Right. You had the mixes.
We could sit on it, realize the things that we didn't like, change some of the things that we did, or like lean in deeper to the things that we did like. But it also, there weren't records that sounded like this at the time. It's a very uniquely recorded record and coming off proper, which is very slick. This is more, it's natural. The sounds are natural. There's a lot of really cool Brian Deck producing techniques in here, a lot of interesting sounds, a lot of choices that bands at that time in the genre that we existed in weren't doing yet. And I've always been a big fan of working with folks who exist somewhat left of center or outside of the sphere that you exist in genre-wise, because it allows you to really tap into some creative stuff that you might be too like tunnel vision to be able to figure out. So
this was also a big shift for you too, because now you're kind of formulating the band at the time too, right?
We never went back. Yeah. There was never like solo Into It Over It after this. Right. It was always it was
a big shift.
It was a really, really big shift. And at that point Nick was no longer able to do the band after becoming a doctor full time. And I had done a lot of touring in the early stages of Into It Over It with a band called Former Thieves, which were a really badass hardcore band from Cedar Falls, Iowa. But like as this was beginning to come out, Former Thieves was beginning to break up. And the Joshes the 2 Joshes who played in that band, Josh Parks and Josh Sparks, those are their real names.
It's true. I've seen their birth certificates.
Those are their real names. But they weren't ready to be done being in a band yet. And we formed that really tight bond and close relationship. And, and I was able to take over the lease for their van, which was Vanessa, who was,
Release
my van up until this year, Release 100. So they moved to Chicago and really bet a lot on Into It Over It and joined, and we toured together pretty nonstop along with our friend Tim Mortensen for like 2.5 years.
And you guys were crushing it. You guys were doing a lot. And this is right when the emo revival.
Emo was beginning to take off. Yeah. It was a situation where like a bunch of bands from the era that I came up with, maybe not the same age because I've been doing this a long fucking time, but the crop of bands that existed when I was existing were all beginning to be on the rise, and all of us had no idea what we were doing.
Right.
Like we're all making it up as we go. We're figuring it out as we go. We don't know what decisions are right or wrong. And, but we all made it work. So the last thing I think worth chatting about with Intersections is what
the impact.
What we were able to accomplish with this record. So a few things. When this record came out, I think a lot of people were very puzzled.
Which I think I hit on earlier. I hit on that earlier. Yeah, I said, but you went in a different direction.
It's consistent with every Into It Over record. I think people, at this point don't know what to expect. And I think now folks are anticipating something like that, like not knowing what we're going to do next. But also like at that time, the reviews were very, very mixed. We were on some shit that no one else was really doing. And I still feel like Into It Over is kind of on some shit generally that no one else is really doing.
And I'm not trying to toot your horn. I'm not trying to, but I think it's really important that you did that. And I think it's really good for everyone, like in the genre, that you do that, because if you don't do that, it's just the same thing. And, I mean, I think I just got better at guitar personally. That's my own thing.
Sure.
But that developed my own personal way of writing, and working with you has helped me to do that too.
Well, I appreciate that.
Yeah, but like I think for your own sake, it's good to push yourself, right? Like
100%. Like you don't want to just keep making the same. You don't want to keep making the same records over and over and over again. That being said, people were confused. There was like a general befuddlement of what we were as a band when that record came out, and it wasn't received well at the very beginning.
Did you get a Pitchfork review?
We did. And so we were the second.
Nice.
We were the second emo band.
Who was the first?
World Is was the first.
Okay.
World Is beat us by just like a couple months. So maybe like a month. And but we were the second one that Ian Cohen ever talked about on Pitchfork. But that was like a pretty groundbreaking time. Like people weren't, that wasn't happening. Like new folks and audiences were beginning to recognize what our scene of bands was doing. And our scene of bands was so varied. It was, there's hardcore bands, emo bands, like brooding indie stuff, but like we were all kind of coming up at the same moment. It was just really, really unique to see folks who had never paid attention to what we were working on before suddenly really begin to understand that we were like doing something new and exciting. At the same time, when we were rolling out this record, I was on the Carson Daly show. Do you remember Carson Daly?
Yeah. Oh, I do remember you did that.
So Carson Daly. So we played a show at Shuba's. It was our album release show for Intersections, and it had been filmed. The whole show was filmed. You could probably find footage of it somewhere. But so they used the footage from that record release show to air on the Carson Daly show. And when you do the Carson Daly show, you don't meet him. You don't get to meet the guy. They fly you to Los Angeles. They put you up for like 2 days, and then they interview you, but it's not Carson Daly interviewing you. It's like some team of other people that just interview you in like some, secret location and talk to you about whatever it is you're doing. And it was one of the most surreal experiences of my life. And that episode rolled out while we were on tour in support of the record, which was super, super cool. That being said, Into It Over, it was never a band that was like we're not a festival band, and we're not, even though we'd played festivals, we're not really a festival band. We're not really like a TV band. We're on our own shit. And so it always felt a little strange for me to be participating in stuff like that when we were asked. Like we always just kind of felt a little bit out of place. And
but it's still cool.
It was still cool. It was a crazy experience, like totally outrageous experience.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think as time went on, and it wasn't until years later that I think Intersections as a record really began to get its due. Like people really who were not a fan of the album at first had begun to revisit it and had begun to catch up to where we were age-wise when this record was made. I mean, 2012, I was, like 28, 29 years old at that time when we made this record. And before, when Proper came out, we were like 25, but Proper, I think, was able to tap into a younger crowd in a way that Intersections wasn't. And at the time, years later, those kids who were young and maybe weren't feeling it at the time had grown older and begun to, step into that age where the album began to make more sense.
Well, when Intersections came out, I went to the record store and I bought it. And then I think I texted you and I went, hey, I bought your record and it's great. It's the best thing you've done. Because that's what friendship is.
That's what friendship is.
But also, I think it's true. At the time, it was my favorite. I liked it more than Proper. And that's because because
it's better than Proper.
Yeah,
it's like, I agree. In my opinion, every record every Into It Over record has kind of excelled over the record.
You want every record to be better than your last record. Otherwise, it's not fun.
Yeah, what's the point?
It's not fun at all.
If you're not growing and evolving, then what's the point?
Exactly.
And I never wanted to be one of those bands that just like spins our wheels and just keeps regurgitating the same shit over and over again. I see bands, and I'm friends with some bands that do that, and it's just like you can tell how sad they are that they have to keep playing the old records over and over again. even I struggle with nostalgia. Like us doing the Intersections tour last year, I struggled with that because it's like, I'm always looking forward. You know, I hate looking back and harping back on older things. And so, you know, and then, you know, and that's counterintuitive to some stuff I've done because there are moments where I do bathe in nostalgia a little bit, but like at the core of who I am, I'm always trying to move forward. You
know, like the greats say, you can't look back in anger.
As a wise man once said, yeah, don't look back in anger, not can't.
Oh, what did I say?
You said can't look back in anger.
Must be the Diet Coke. But, you know, I think that is a very important thing. And, you know, as we are here sitting with you, talking to you about Storm Chasers history, lore, rich history, it's just so interesting because it is nostalgia, right? Like we are kind of, you know, we're looking back on these fun things.
Never got to tell the story about this album. There's so much about this that you all probably didn't know until this record. I mean, if you cared about this record at all and you're chiming in, like, you know, there's a lot of cool shit that we got to do. I mean, there was also a documentary a mini doc that we made surrounding this with the help of our friends, Mitch Wojcik and Dave Summers, which you can find on the internet somewhere, I'm sure. But even that doesn't really dive into everything quite the way that we did just now. So,
and sometimes, you know, not knowing everything is better.
Yeah.
But I loved a lot of the things you shared and, you know, just like the process and who you worked with and how, you know, this record, what it means to you, right? Because like
this record does mean a lot to me. It represents a real specific time. It represents a moment in which we were kind of flying by the seat of our pants and, you know, making it up as we went. And you know, I look back on this record pretty fondly. There are definitely some things I would have changed and there's a lot that I wouldn't have changed. And, but it really set us up to be able to go into the next record standards. And if you were interested in getting a copy of this record, we just repressed it. Storm Chasers, in fact, purchased a majority of what was left of the pressing. So if you wanted to get the record, we are probably one of the only places that you can get it. And we have a couple hundred copies left. You know, so if you want to order it from our web store, stormchasersltd.com.
Link in the bio.
Link in the motherfucking bio.
Or whatever you call YouTube. Down there.
Yeah. But yeah, you can grab one from us. It might be the last time we ever press it again. But you know, it's a beautiful presentation.
The new ones are the same layout and everything.
Same layout
and
everything. Yeah, it's exactly the same.
You don't even need the original. You can just get this new one.
Yeah.
New shiny one.
Truly. Anyway.
I don't know if I heard a noise and I don't know if that means it died again.
Oh, it died again.
But if it did,
you know what, y'all? I gotta tell you, we're trapped in the black box. We're gonna see you next time for episode Storm005.
Hey, it's okay. We're gonna get over it. And you know what? We're trapped in the abyss with you. Our favorite people in this abyss,
baby. Till next time on the record. Peace. Bye.
Chickadee China, the Chinese chicken. You have a brain that then rain starts ticking. Chickadee China, the Chinese chicken. You have a drumstick and your brain starts ticking.